Heyo, what's up and welcome. I'm the one and only West Coast King, and welcome back to Major League 90, where we are talking Major League Soccer. Yes, the new season is right around the corner, which means it is time for some prediction videos. Last year, I did all right. You know, some hits, some misses, some massive misses. LA Galaxy, I'm looking at you, really let me down last year. But you know what? That's okay. With a league that's built upon parity, it's really difficult to predict sometimes where these teams are going to fall. So we'll do our best again this year, and we'll see how it goes. And as always, we'll be breaking this up into two videos. Today, we'll be looking at the Eastern Conference, and the next video, we'll be looking at the West. So let's get things started off in a very strong-looking Eastern Conference heading into this season. So we'll start off at the bottom. It's always a fun place to start, isn't it? Well, it is unless you're a fan of these teams I'm about to name off, but it's okay. All is not lost. Again, I could be completely wrong here. I'm shooting out my butt here. I have no idea what's going to happen. It's very difficult to predict, but starting off at the bottom, in the number 11 spot, I'm going to go with the New England Revolution. I've said a few times on Twitter and in a couple of live streams, this could be the year where New England completely collapses. Everything falls apart. It's looking like it's been building for a long time, where this is the road that they're heading down. And they keep losing players. Players aren't happy there. I mean, look at Lee Nguyen, their most high-profile player. He's basically the face of that franchise. He held out a month before he even reported to the team this season. He's unhappy over his contract. This seems like a team that has failed to adapt to the new way that the MLS is going. Things have changed a lot in the last few years in MLS, and New England hasn't kept up with the times. They're just stuck in the past. And until they learn how to reacclimate themselves and fix the way that they go about their business, I don't see this getting better anytime soon for them. And they're perfectly, you know, they're allowed to run that team however they want to run it. But to me, it looks like they're running it into the ground, unfortunately. So I think their attack is going to be strong as always. They've got a lot of good attacking players in Diego Fagundes, Kellen Rowe, Lee Nguyen, if you know he's there and actually wants to play. Juan Agudelo, they added Christian Pania. So it's a strong attack, but as always, that defense is abysmal. They haven't done anything to strengthen that. So I don't see this being a good season for New England. In the number 10 spot, and this one is more because how bad they were last season, but I'm going to go with DC United here. To me, on paper, this team doesn't look that bad, but they were dead last in the East last year by quite a large margin, finishing with 32 points, 7 behind 10th place Orlando. That's a big gap to make up. But they have done a lot to bolster that team, bringing in Darren Maddox to head the front line. We'll see if what he can do as a full-time starter at striker. He could be very prolific for them, or he could be a bit of a bust. They do have Patrick Mullins to fall back on, so the attack looks a little bit better there. They also brought in Yamil Assad, which I thought was a stroke of genius. He played very well in Atlanta last year. His loan ran out there. Atlanta decided not to re-sign him for obvious reasons that we'll get to later. And DC swooped in and picked him up. I thought that was a good pickup for them. You add him to the likes of Paul Arriola, Zoltan Steiber, Luciano Acosta. It's a strong-looking midfield. They boosted the defense as well. So this team, I mean, you hear me talking about it. I like the look of this team, but given how bad they were last year and the fact that they lost Bill Hamid, that's a big loss. They lost their starting goalkeeper, one of the better ones in the league. It's a question mark. They're very much a question mark. So I'm going to put them at 10th, but I wouldn't be surprised if I saw them challenging for a playoff spot midway through the season. We'll see how, you know, if we get to the midway point of the season and they're still in it, maybe there's a chance. Again, I'm not sure with this team. It looks good, but there's a lot of question marks. Coming in at number 9 for me is going to be Philadelphia. And this is another team that I'm not too sure about. They looked good to start off last year. I think a couple of mistakes to start the season. I thought going with Jay Simpson to start off the year was a mistake. They should have gone with CJ Sapong. Turned out I was right. They brought him in and he did a great job for them as always. I don't know why you would not go with CJ Sapong when you have him on your roster, but hopefully they'll go with him to start the year this year. But goal scoring was a bit of a problem for them last season. They brought in David Accam. That's a huge get for them. That's an upgrade for nearly every team in the league to get David Accam, a proven MLS talent. Had a great year in Chicago. Not sure why Chicago would want to get rid of him, but they sent him to Philadelphia. He joins the midfield of Alejandro Bedoya, Harris Medunjanin, Fabian Herbers. There's a lot of good things in that Philadelphia team. But the question mark and where this whole thing is going to kind of hinge, whether they're a successful team or they kind of go down the gutter, is going to be the defense. They were actually the 4th best defensive team in the Eastern Conference last year, but there's a lot of unproven talent at center back. There's a lot of young players: Austin Trusty, Jack Elliott, Josh Yarrow, Richie Marquez. Which one of those four, which two of those four is going to step up and be a leader in that defense? Can they solidify that center back spot, those 2 center back spots? That's yet to be known. I really have a hard time picking them to be a playoff team without knowing what that defense is going to look like. But if they can get any kind of consistency in there in front of Andre Blake, who's one of the better goalkeepers in the league, they might be okay. You know what? They might be a playoff team this year. I said at the start of last year, they might be 1 or 2 seasons away still. That might still be the case. They could put it together, though. They might be a playoff team, but for now, too many question marks in that defense for me to put them in the top 6. At number 8, I'm going to go with Montreal. And I don't necessarily think that they're going to be any better than they were last year. They finished 9th last season. I have them at 8 here. But I don't think that they're going to be any worse either. I think they're still about the same level that they were last season. And that's despite adding a couple of pieces. They got a little bit younger and more athletic, bringing in Raheem Edwards, which they desperately needed. They brought in Safir Titer as well to bolster that midfield, which was really good. And you add that to the already proven commodities in Mateo Mancosu and Nacho Piatti. So they have things to fall back on as far as goal scoring goes. But that wasn't their problem last year. Scoring goals, they were actually pretty decent at. I mean, at least they were about average for Eastern Conference teams. Defensively was where they struggled, and I think that's going to be their downfall again this season. I just don't see them having a good enough defense and goalkeeper combination to really make a push and be competitive for a playoff spot this season. I'd be more surprised if they made the playoffs than I would be if they slipped and finished maybe last or next to last. I think that's kind of where this team is at. They brought in a new manager as well in Remy Gard, who's managed at the highest level in France and in England. But I don't think it's enough. They need more reinforcements. They need just more talent overall to really be a better team. In at number 7, I'm going to go with the Chicago Fire here. And I think I had them finishing right around here last season as well. You guys said I was wrong. That was the biggest one that you guys called me out on last season, was saying I had Chicago too low. You were right. They finished 3rd in the league last season, not just the Eastern Conference. They had more points than any Western Conference team last season. But as it always seems to be the case with this team, it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back. They did fantastic last season, but then they traded away their best playmaker in David Accam, and I don't think that they've done enough to replace him. Offensively, they were fantastic. I think they finished 2nd, or technically 3rd, behind Toronto and Atlanta. If you're trying to pick one of those two to be better at, good luck, because I put them both at number 1. So I put Chicago number 2 as far as offense goes, but they're not going to be that good this year. Not without David Accam. They still have Nemanja Nikolic, who's great. Behind him, I don't think they have a lot of depth, so that could be one area where if they pick up an injury, they're doomed. And then defensively, they're still fairly decent there. I think that they're still a pretty good defensive team, and hopefully that's going to be enough to carry them through games, because I think goal scoring is going to be a bit of a problem. Like I said, lost their best playmaker, don't really have a number 10 to create anything for them, at least not a proven one anyway. I think that they take a massive step back this season, and unless they add more pieces before the season starts or at mid-season sometime during the mid-season transfer window, I don't even think this is really going to be a playoff team. They might be close, but I don't think that they're quite going to make the playoffs this season, not with the roster that they have right now. At number 6, I'm going to go with the Columbus Crew, and it's interesting. I said Chicago lost their best playmaker. Columbus lost both of their playmakers in Justin Miram and Ola Kamara, although they did replace one of them with Gyasi Zardes, and that is kind of going to be where this whole thing is going to either come together and they're going to be a good team, or they're not. It's going to be Gyasi Zardes. He's finally going to get the chance to be the guy on a team, something he was never able to do in LA. He's going to be the number 9, the striker, the man up top to score goals. Last year, he couldn't score goals to save his life. So we'll see what happens. If he's able to have the breakout season that I think he's going to have, they should be a competitive team and probably just scratch into the playoffs. Still need a little bit of development. They have a lot of good pieces, though. Pedro Santos, Artur, Federico Higuain. Their defense was pretty good last year, but I think it takes another step forward this season, especially with Zach Steffen continuing to grow in the goal. They're a good team. They are a good team. It's just going to depend on whether or not Giassi Zardes is going to be the star everyone thought he was going to be a few years ago before his growth kind of got stunted a little bit. So it all hinges on him. The pressure is on. I think he comes through for them, though. At number 5, it's the team that I just can't ever bet against, and it's the New York Red Bulls. I don't think I can really ever pick them to not be a playoff team. They're just such a well-built team. They make a lot of very controversial moves. For instance, second season in a row, they've traded their captain away. First Dax McCarty, now Sasha Kljestan. But they seem to know what they're doing, and I trust in the process that they go through. They brought in a new young DP in Kaku, which I really do like. It gives them something they haven't had in a while, and that is athleticism in the middle of the pitch. They've really been lacking. Last year, they looked really old and really slow at times. I think that gives them a different element this season. They have a lot of young players from the Red Bulls 2 academy players coming through their team. So yeah, they're going to be young at times, a little bit raw, but I still think that they're still a good team. They have one of the most bankable strikers in the league in Bradley Wright Phillips. Still a solid midfield. I think Tyler Adams takes another step forward this season in his progression and becomes a standout midfielder in this league. And their defense is still solid. Goalkeeper with Luis Robles, as always, is good. I still think that they're going to be a playoff team. There's almost nothing that this team could do aside from maybe getting rid of Bradley Wright Phillips that would make me say that they're not a playoff team. I think that's how well built the Red Bulls are and how good that front office and management team has been. At number 4, this is the one that I've been waiting for, and I'm going to go with Orlando. I think I picked them to be a playoff team every season that they've been in existence. Every season they've been in the MLS, which I think this is what, their third or fourth season. So it hasn't been very long, but I keep saying that they're going to be there. They're going to be there. They have the talent. They're going to get over the hump, and they haven't done it. Last year, they finished 10th. Only DC was worse than them. But this year, they have had one of the most impressive off seasons that I think any team has ever had. They've added so much quality and depth to this team. I'm struggling to find a hole in this squad anywhere. They still have Dom Dwyer up top. The only knock I would say is if they still had Kyle Larin, yeah, that would put them over the top. I would pick them to be an MLS Cup contender this season. But they did lose Larin. That's a big loss for them. But Dwyer is still there. And they added the NASL MVP / Golden Boot winner in Stefano Pino. Pino. Sorry, I keep saying Pino. Pino. I'll get that right. Stefano Pino. I know I'll get that right because I'm thinking he's going to have a good season this year. He might actually outperform Dom Dwyer. We'll have to see how that goes. But they also added Justin Miram, who was one of the best players in the league last season for Columbus. They added Sasha Kljestan, who just is quality attacking mid. Gonna give service into the box to those strikers and spray the ball around. Just a great player to have in the middle of the pitch. Oriol Rosell from Sporting Kansas City. There's not a more solid center defensive mid in the league. He came out of the Barcelona La Masia Academy. He's been in the league for quite a while. Knows his way around. I like him as well. And they added a Bundesliga quality starter at center back in Lamine Sané to go next to Jonathan Spector. I don't think that there's a center back duo in the league with more European experience than those two players. So I don't see where the holes are in this team. They're loaded. They have depth and they have the talent. There's no excuses for Orlando this time. There's no excuses at all. They better be a playoff team, and I expect them to really be a contender this season. At number 3, and these are really the 3 top dogs now. This is really where the men are separated from the boys. I'm going to go with Atlanta United at number 3. They added more pieces to that attack this offseason, and impressive pieces at that. They already have Joseph Martinez, Miguel Almiron, and Hector Villalba coming back. They did lose Yamil Assad, but they replaced him with Ezequiel Barco, one of the best young players coming out of South America. And they also added Darlington Nagbe from the Portland Timbers. That is a lot of different players that can beat you one-on-one off the dribble. It's going to be interesting to see how those pieces fit together as far as the fluidity and movement and passing goes, but I don't assume that there's going to be any problems there. They were one of the best attacks in the league last season. Only Toronto scored more goals. I would expect them to actually take a step forward in that category. How could you not? But with all those attacking players, my worry is that they are now going to be unbalanced. They lost Carlos Carmona, who was kind of their defense in the midfield. He was the person that made it all work and made it all balanced and everything. They don't have him anymore, and they haven't replaced him. And when you think about it, those 5 players, Martinez, Barco, Nagby, Almiron, and Villalba, that's 5 players for 6 positions in the midfield and attack. I don't know how the defense is going to work. They made it work last year. I mean, they were the second best defense in the league, or in the Eastern Conference. Only Toronto was better than them in that category as well. So they figured it out last year. I would probably bank on them figuring it out again this year, and maybe taking another step forward. They could finish as high as second, maybe even first in the East. You never know. But I do have some questions and a little bit of a worry about the balance on that team. So they're a fantastic team. They're going to overwhelm a lot of their opponents, but they might be susceptible a little bit on that defensive end. At number 2, I'm going to go with NYCFC. Once again, they finished second last year. I'm going to pick them to finish second again this season. And this is kind of the opposite of Atlanta. I love the balance on this team. I think this is a very, very well-constructed team. They still have David Villa up top, who is one of the best players in the league, obviously. Rodney Wallace, Jesus Medina, a new addition. Angel Herrera, who had a breakout year last year. I expect him to take another step forward and continue to be a solid player in that midfield. Maxi Morales, Alex Ring. The defense is still really, really good. Goalkeeper is decent. I love the balance of this team. I don't see any holes there. I love it. Depth, maybe a bit questionable, but they do have good players, man. I know they lost Jack Harrison, but they replaced him with Jesus Medina. I love the team. I don't think they're any worse than they were last year. I don't think that they might be any better either, but that's not a problem when you're the second best team in the league. So they're still definitely a threat for the MLS Cup. And at number 1, is there really any debate about this one? It's Toronto. And we're talking about a team last year that was the best team in MLS history. And I would say arguably, yeah, they're a year older. They really haven't changed the team all that much. But I would say that the one position that they lost their starter in was Steven Beitashour at right back, or right wing back. And they went out and they improved that position, I would say, by getting Gregory Vanderweil, who has a ton of European experience, including time at PSG. It's like I always say that there's a difference between adding players and adding the right players. Toronto is one of the few teams in the league that seems to always add the right players. Their front office and management is one of the best in the league. There is no debate about that, proven by the fact that they've been to back-to-back MLS Cups. And we're actually talking about a team here that not only are they looking to, repeat as MLS Cup champions and Supporters Shield winners, they're also looking at, and by the way, Canadian Domestic Cup, the Voyagers Cup as well, maybe even competing for a quadruple with the CONCACAF Champions League. We're not talking about that with any other team. I don't think we've ever talked about that with any other team in MLS history. They are that good to the point where it's almost not fair. Great goalkeeper, excellent defense, one of the best, if not the best midfields in the league. And oh, by the way, to top it off, the 2 cherries on top of that cake, Josie Altidore and Sebastian Giovinco, which nobody's been able to figure out how to stop in the last 2 years. So good luck playing this team. I feel bad for every other Eastern Conference team this year. It really is almost to the point where it's just not fair. So that is my take on the Eastern Conference for this upcoming season. Let me know what your thoughts are down in the comments below. Did I have some teams ranked too high, some teams too low? Let me know specifically who are your playoff teams this season. Those last 2 playoff spots in the East are really, really difficult for me to predict. I think the top 4 are pretty solid, including Orlando. The last 2, I'm not so sure about, but I did my best to predict them as best I could. So let me know what your thoughts are down in the comments below about that. But that is a wrap for this one. If you did enjoy it, make sure to let me know by leaving a like below. Subscribe if you're new, and I will see you when we come back to predict the Western Conference. See ya.